A single gunshot shatters the eerie silence of Holloway Park. A black teenage girl collapses, her hoodie turning crimson. Officer Randall Briggs stands frozen, smoke still curling from his gun's barrel. Then, a chilling scream slices through the air. Mayor Charles Eaton's eyes widen in sheer horror. This was his daughter, and this was just the beginning. The late afternoon sun hangs low over Holloway Park, casting long shadows through the towering trees. It's supposed to be a quiet patrol, just another routine sweep of the restricted area. Officer Randall Briggs steers his squad car slowly along the park's perimeter, his trained eyes scanning the empty pathways. Then he spots movement. A lone figure walking through the park. His grip tightens on the steering wheel. A teenage black girl, hood up, hands tucked into the pockets of her hoodie. She walks with an air of confidence, as if she belongs here, but to Briggs, she doesn't. Not at this hour, not in this part of town. Suspicion coils in his chest. He's been a cop long enough to know when something feels off. He pulls over, tires crunching against the pavement, and steps out. "Hey! You can't be here!" he calls, his voice sharp, authoritative. The girl stops but doesn't flinch. She turns to face him, her expression unreadable. "I'm just walking home," she says, calm but firm. Briggs narrows his eyes. The way she stands, the way she speaks, it irritates him. Too relaxed, too sure of herself. He steps closer. "This park is closed after hours. You need to leave." She exhales, slow and measured, as if she's dealing with a child. "I live right down the street. My dad—" "I don't care who your dad is." Briggs cuts in, the irritation boiling into frustration. He's had enough of people questioning his authority lately, enough of protesters and activists calling for reform, enough of cameras shoved in his face. He won't let this girl make him look weak. "Hands where I can see them," he orders. The girl lets out a sigh and reaches into her pocket, and that's when everything turns red. Briggs doesn't wait to see what she's pulling out. His training kicks in, the same training drilled into him for years. Threat detected. Neutralize immediately. His finger squeezes the trigger. The gunshot splits the silence like a lightning strike. The impact slams into the girl's chest, sending her stumbling backward. Her legs buckle, and she crumples onto the pavement. A dark stain spreads across her hoodie, stark against the fabric. Briggs's pulse hammers in his ears. His breath comes in short gasps. His hands tremble. The moment stretches, a suffocating eternity. Then a sound rips through the air, a scream, raw, terrified. Briggs's head snaps toward the entrance of the park. A man is running toward them, his expensive suit flapping behind him, his face twisted in horror. Briggs recognizes him instantly. Mayor Charles Eaton. Briggs' stomach plummets as the mayor drops to his knees beside the girl, hands pressing desperately against the wound. "No, no, no!" Eaton chokes out. "Stay with me, baby. Stay with me." Briggs' world shatters. He just shot the mayor's daughter. The wail of sirens slices through the thick tension of Holloway Park, flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the pavement. The air is thick with panic, thick with the metallic scent of blood. Officer Randall Briggs stands frozen, his gun still clutched in his trembling hands. He hears the rapid footsteps of paramedics racing toward the girl, but his eyes remain locked on Mayor Charles Eaton, who kneels beside her, desperately pressing down on the wound. The mayor's face is pale, his eyes wild. "Help her! Help her!" he shouts, voice cracking with raw desperation. The paramedics shove Briggs aside as they begin working on the girl, their movements urgent. One of them checks her pulse, another rips open a medical bag, pulling out gauze, clamps, and a breathing mask. Blood pools beneath her, staining the cracked pavement beneath her fragile body. Her breaths are shallow, rapid, uneven. Briggs sways on his feet, his stomach twisting. He tells himself he followed protocol, that he reacted the way any officer would have, but the weight of the gun in his hands feels heavier than it ever has before. Then, a movement from the trees. A figure stands in the shadows, half hidden by the dimming afternoon light. A glow flickers. A phone screen. Someone is recording. Briggs's throat runs dry. He doesn't know how much they caught, but he knows this is bad, very bad. The distant hum of the city grows louder. Somewhere, news is already spreading. He can feel it, the storm brewing, the eyes of the public turning toward him, toward this moment. The city had already been on edge, protests against police brutality, complaints piling up against the department, reform promises from the mayor, and now this. A white cop shooting an unarmed black teenage girl. Not just any girl, the mayor's daughter. The sound of car doors slamming shakes him from his daze. More officers have arrived. They surround him, weapons drawn, not at some unknown suspect, but at him, his own people. Drop your weapon. Briggs's hands are slick with sweat. He hesitates. For the first time in his career, he's on the other side of the gun. Now! Slowly, his fingers loosen. The gun clatters to the pavement. Sergeant Olivia Carter, a no-nonsense officer with years of experience and a reputation for cutting through corruption, steps forward. She wastes no time, grabbing Briggs's arm and yanking it behind his back. The cold steel of handcuffs snaps around his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," Carter says, her voice hard, controlled. Briggs doesn't fight. He barely breathes. Because this isn't how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be the one giving orders, the one in control. But now, standing there in cuffs, the weight of what he's done pressing down on him, he realizes, for the first time in his life, he is powerless. The squad car rumbles through the city streets, its sirens silent, but the weight of the moment screams louder than any alarm ever could. Randall Briggs stares straight ahead, his face blank, but his mind is a hurricane. His wrists ache from the cuffs, his throat is dry, and his heartbeat thunders in his ears. He doesn't need to turn his head to know that the officers in the front seat, Sergeant Olivia Carter and Officer Daniels, aren't looking at him like a colleague anymore. They're looking at him like a problem. Carter's grip tightens on the steering wheel, her jaw clenched. "You really screwed up, Briggs," she mutters, eyes locked on the road. Briggs swallows but says nothing. What could he say? Outside, the city is alive, unaware that its foundation has just cracked. People walk the sidewalks, sipping coffee, hailing cabs, going about their afternoon. But soon, everything will change. Soon, the news will break. A police shooting. An unarmed black teenager. The mayor's daughter. His stomach knots. He needs to think, to come up with a way out of this, a way to explain, a way to make them understand that he didn't mean to do it. That it was instinct. That it wasn't about race. That it wasn't personal. But it was personal now. Daniels glances back at him, his expression unreadable. "They're gonna tear you apart, man." Briggs grits his teeth. He knows it. The mayor, the media, the activists, everyone will be coming for him. His name, his career, his entire life will be dissected and dragged through the mud. And the worst part? He deserves it. The car makes a sharp turn, heading toward the precinct, but then Carter suddenly changes course. Briggs frowns. "Where are we going?" Carter doesn't answer. Daniels shifts uncomfortably. "We're supposed to take him in." Carter's grip on the wheel tightens. "Not to the station." Briggs feels a cold chill creep up his spine. This isn't protocol. The car moves away from the main streets, weaving through quieter, more isolated roads. His pulse spikes. Something isn't right. "Carter," he says, voice low, controlled. "Where the hell are you taking me?" No response. Daniels looks like he wants to argue, but he doesn't. That's when Briggs understands. This isn't an arrest. This is a delivery. His chest tightens. He leans forward as much as the cuffs will allow. "You don't have to do this," he says, trying to keep his voice steady. Carter finally looks at him through the rearview mirror. Her expression is hard, unreadable. "I don't." She pauses. "But I am." The car turns down an alley, stopping in a shadowed lot behind an abandoned building. The air is thick with silence. Briggs's breath catches as he sees them. A black SUV, its headlights cutting through the dim afternoon light, and standing beside it, Mayor Charles Eaton. The air inside the squad car feels suffocating. Randall Briggs's pulse pounds as he stares out the window at the black SUV parked ahead. Mayor Charles Eaton stands beside it, his broad shoulders rigid, his hands clenched into fists. His suit, usually pristine, is stained with his daughter's blood. Briggs swallows hard. This isn't protocol. Carter shifts in the driver's seat, her expression unreadable. Daniels exhales slowly but says nothing. Briggs clenches his jaw. You're just handing me over to him? Carter doesn't look at him. Get out, Briggs. Briggs hesitates, but Daniels reaches back and yanks the door open. Cold air rushes in. The weight of his situation sinks deeper. Slowly, Briggs steps out, his cuffed wrists aching as the metal bites into his skin. Eaton's eyes burn into him. He takes a slow step forward, his movements controlled, dangerous. The look in his eyes is worse than rage. It's certainty. Briggs straightens, forcing himself to meet the mayor's gaze. Mr. Eaton! A fist slams into his jaw. Briggs stumbles, nearly falling. Stars explode behind his eyes, pain radiating down his spine. Carter doesn't move. Daniels doesn't flinch. This was part of the plan. Briggs spits blood onto the pavement. His head throbs, but he doesn't speak. There's nothing he can say. Eaton steps closer, his voice low, razor sharp. You put my daughter in a hospital bed. His breath is ragged, barely controlled. You're going to wish you had died in that park. Briggs breathes through his nose, steadying himself. It was a mistake. Eaton's jaw tightens. Number A mistake is forgetting to set an alarm. A mistake is missing a turn. His voice turns to ice. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Briggs swallows the lump in his throat. A long silence stretches between them. Then Eaton exhales sharply. I should kill you right now. The words aren't a threat. They're a fact. Briggs believes him. Eaton steps back, composing himself. But death would be too easy. He glances at Carter. Unlock him. Carter hesitates, then moves forward, pulling out the key. The cuffs click open. Briggs rubs his sore wrists, his mind racing. Eaton straightens his tie, his expression darkening. You have two options, Briggs. Briggs stiffens. What options? Eaton's eyes narrow. 1. You disappear. Leave this city, change your name, never show your face again. His voice lowers. Or 2. I make sure the world sees exactly who you are. Briggs's stomach knots. He already knows what Eaton means. The video, the footage of the shooting. Briggs licks his dry lips. If I leave, the video stays buried? Eaton tilts his head slightly. It stays buried. For now. Briggs exhales slowly. His life is over either way. But one choice lets him walk away. The other buries him forever. His mouth feels dry. He has to decide. Briggs stands frozen, the weight of Eaton's words pressing down on him like a vice. Two options. Disappear forever or have his face plastered on every screen in the country. Neither choice feels like survival. His instincts scream at him to fight back, to find a third way out. But he knows the truth. There is no escaping this. Eaton watches him, waiting. His bodyguards stand still as statues, their presence a silent warning. Briggs glances at Carter. She holds his gaze for a moment, then looks away. She won't help him. Not this time. Briggs exhales shakily. And if I refuse both? Eaton smiles, but there's no warmth in it. Then I make sure you never see another sunrise. The words are quiet, deadly. A cold shiver runs down Briggs' spine. Eaton isn't bluffing. Silence stretches between them. Then Eaton steps back. You have 24 hours to leave this city. Briggs's pulse spikes. And if I stay? Eaton's smile fades. Then you'll wish I'd pulled the trigger myself. The mayor nods to Carter. Get him out of my sight. Without a word, Carter grabs Briggs by the arm and shoves him toward the car. His feet drag against the pavement, his body running on autopilot. As the car pulls away, Briggs stares out the window at the city he once thought he owned. The streets blur past, neon lights flickering against the darkening sky. The life he built, the power he held, it's all crumbling beneath him. Daniels drives in silence. Carter sits beside him, arms crossed, her jaw tight. Briggs finally speaks, his voice hollow. You really gonna let him decide my fate? Carter exhales sharply, but doesn't turn to face him. You decided your fate the second you pulled that trigger. Her words cut deeper than any bullet ever could. Briggs clenches his jaw. So that's it? I just run. Carter finally looks at him, her expression unreadable. You still breathing, aren't you? Briggs doesn't respond. The car slows. Briggs looks up, realizing they're not heading toward the station, not even out of the city. His stomach twists. Where are we going? Carter doesn't answer. Briggs grips the edge of the seat, his pulse quickening. Carter. She finally speaks, her voice cold. You're not walking away that easy. The car turns down a deserted alley, stopping near an abandoned warehouse. The engine hums in the silence. Briggs swallows hard. You gonna kill me? Carter exhales, looking away. Not my call. The back door swings open. Two figures stand outside, their faces obscured by shadows. Briggs's blood runs cold. He was wrong. There was a third option, and it was worse than all the rest. Briggs's pulse pounds in his ears as the car door swings open. Two figures stand outside, their silhouettes outlined by the dim glow of the streetlight. One of them steps forward, the light catching his face. Marcus Greer, Eaton's enforcer, a man with a reputation for making problems disappear. Briggs stiffens, his hands clench into fists, but he knows there's no point in fighting. Not now, not here. Carter steps out first, leaving him trapped in the back seat. She doesn't look at him, doesn't offer a single word of explanation. Greer tilts his head, smirking. You look nervous, Briggs. Briggs forces his expression blank. What's this? Greer chuckles, his voice a low, rumbling threat. Insurance. The second figure steps closer, reaching into his pocket. Briggs tenses, expecting a gun. But instead, the man pulls out a phone. He presses play. The video flickers to life. Briggs watches in horror as the scene unfolds, his own actions played back to him in brutal clarity. The girl reaching for something, his gun raising, the shot. Then, the part he never saw. A glint of silver slipping from her fingers before she hit the ground. Not a weapon, not a threat, a badge. Briggs' breath catches in his throat. The mayor's daughter hadn't been reaching for a gun. She had been trying to show him who she was. He feels sick. His stomach twists violently, but he can't look away. The video stops. Silence hangs thick in the air. Greer pockets the phone, stepping closer. You understand now, don't you? His voice is calm, almost mocking. This isn't about a bad call. This isn't about panic. He leans in, voice lowering. This is about what's inside you. Briggs's jaw locks. His throat is dry. He has no defense. Greer straightens, his smirk fading. Eaton doesn't just want you gone, Briggs. He wants you ruined. Briggs forces himself to speak. So what's the play? Greer gestures to the car. You leave tonight. No questions, no second chances. Briggs scoffs, shaking his head. And if I don't? Greer's smirk returns. Then you get to see how much worse this can be. Carter finally speaks, her voice quiet but firm. Just go, Briggs. Briggs looks at her, searching for something in her expression. An ounce of hesitation, a shred of doubt. But all he sees is certainty. His hands tremble. Every instinct tells him to fight, to resist. But deep down, he knows. He's already lost. Without another word, he steps out of the car. The city hums around him, a living, breathing thing he no longer belongs to. As the car pulls away, Briggs watches the taillights vanish into the night. Alone in the silence, he finally understands. This isn't an escape. It's a sentence. And there's no coming back from it. Briggs moves through the city like a ghost. Every shadow feels like a threat. Every passing car a warning. The weight of what he's done presses down on him, heavier than the gun at his side. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a destination. He just knows one thing. He can't stop moving. Not now. Not ever. The streets feel different now. He's walked them for years, patrolled them, enforced the rules. But tonight, they don't belong to him. They never did. A TV flickers through a storefront window. The news anchor's voice is distant, muffled, but the words still hit him like a punch to the gut. Officer Randall Briggs, now under investigation for the shooting of Mayor Eaton's daughter, is currently unaccounted for. Protests are growing outside City Hall, demanding immediate action. The broadcast cuts to footage of the park, the blood-stained pavement, the shaky phone recording. His pulse spikes. The video is out. Eaton didn't just let him go. He made sure the world saw him for what he really was. Briggs clenches his fists, jaw tightening. He should have seen this coming. The city is a powder keg now, and he's the spark that lit it. He turns away from the screen, pulling the hood of his jacket up. He needs to disappear. But where? His usual contacts won't help him now. No one crosses the mayor. The department has already cut him loose. He's not a cop anymore, just another wanted man. He ducks into an alley, heart pounding. He knows what comes next. Eaton's people won't stop until he's gone for good. And if the mayor doesn't get to him first, the people will. A noise behind him. Footsteps. He whirls, hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. A figure steps out of the darkness. Carter. Briggs exhales sharply, his grip loosening. You shouldn't be here. She crosses her arms. Neither should you. Silence stretches between them. The sounds of the city echo in the distance. Sirens, shouts, the hum of something building. Briggs stares at her, trying to read her expression. Carter finally speaks. You need to leave, Briggs. He scoffs. And go where? Her gaze hardens. Anywhere but here. Briggs shakes his head. You saw the video. You know what happens next. Carter exhales, looking away. She does know. Briggs' voice lowers. Tell me the truth, Carter. Are you here to help me? He narrows his eyes. Or to finish the job? She doesn't answer right away. Then, depends. Briggs tenses. On what? Carter meets his eyes. On whether or not you deserve to get out of this alive. Briggs swallows hard. For the first time, he realizes he doesn't know the answer. Briggs stands frozen, Carter's words echoing in his head. On whether or not you deserve to get out of this alive. For years, he thought he was untouchable. The badge protected him. The system protected him. But now, stripped of everything, he's finally seeing the truth. No one is coming to save him. The city is alive with anger. The protests have grown. Eaton's people are out there hunting him. The cops won't protect him. The streets won't hide him. There's only one move left. He exhales sharply, his jaw tightening. Take me to him. Carter narrows her eyes. To Eaton? Briggs nods. I need to face him. She studies him, searching for hesitation. She finds none. Finally, she exhales. You're either brave or suicidal. Maybe both. The drive to the hospital is tense, silent. Briggs watches the city blur past, a war zone in the making. Fires burn in trash cans. People march with signs. Say her name. Justice for Layla. The weight of it all crushes him. When they pull up to the hospital, the streets are swarming with reporters, protesters, police. Carter flashes a badge, drives through the barricade, and pulls into the underground lot. Briggs steps out, pulse pounding. He's walking into the lion's den, and he knows it. They take the service elevator up. Carter keeps her hand near her weapon, maybe to protect him, maybe to stop him if he makes the wrong move. The doors slide open. The hallway is dim, eerily quiet, and there, waiting, is Eaton. The mayor's eyes are cold, dark with exhaustion and rage. Behind him, two suited men stand like statues, bodyguards, enforcers, executioners. Briggs swallows hard. I needed to see you. Eaton's expression doesn't change. Why? Briggs exhales. Because I know you're going to decide what happens to me. A bitter smile tugs at the mayor's lips. I already have. Briggs clenches his fists. Then say it. Eaton takes a slow step forward. You shot my daughter. His voice is low, dangerous. You watched her bleed. Another step. And now you think you get to walk away? Briggs shakes his head. I don't. Eaton stops inches from him. The tension is suffocating. I just need to see her. For a moment, Eaton says nothing. Then after a long pause, he nods toward the ICU door. Go ahead. Briggs hesitates, then steps inside. Layla lies motionless, machines beeping softly. She's alive, but barely. Her eyes flutter open. When she sees him, pain flickers across her face. Not just from the bullet wound, but from him. Briggs swallows. I'm sorry. Layla stares at him. Her voice is weak but sharp. You were going to kill me? Briggs's throat tightens. Outside, Eaton watches through the window. His voice is cold, final. You don't get to survive this. And Briggs finally knows. He won't.